Good morning. My name is Michael, and I'm broadcasting from my garage located in St. Michael's Parish in the Pine Tree State's most powerful and divided city, Augusta, the political center of Maine. Every day I begin by imploring the assistance of God's Archangel of War, St. Michael. Join with me. St. Michael, the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our defense against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and the other evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen and amen. Okay, hold right there. I need to run over here for a second and close my garage door so I don't wake the folks up who are sleeping in the house. Okay, we're good. We're good. Good morning. This is Tuesday, the 18th of November. I hope you're warm, a little cold, getting a little chilly up here in Maine, down into the low 30s this morning. I guess we're headed for lows in the 20s, in the high 20s for the first time as we approach deepest, darkest winter in the north. So I feel great. I love two forms of heat. One is the Florida sunshine. But what I love even more than that, because Florida is so crowded nowadays and expensive, what I love more than Florida sunshine is wood heat. And I've got plenty of wood to get me through the winter all the way to spring and summer. But unfortunately, my wood provider, we've relied on him for a number of years now, just went out of business. He retired and he sold off of all of his equipment, and he was just down around the corner. So it was helpful to have him so close by and reliable. So if you know somebody in the Augusta area who delivers cut and split 16-inch firewood, I would sure appreciate you emailing me or sending that information my way. I need to reach out to him before next year so that I can make sure I have a wood supply going beyond this winter. I've just got enough for maybe this winter and half of another one, maybe. But boy, yesterday's show was a good one. It's on the archive. You can go check it out. Hit on some provocative ideas related to what's happening in Maine, right of center politically, with the rise of the young men like John Salamone. We talked a bit about him and his surfacing of connections in the Bobby Charles universe that raise alarm bells for me. Long ways to the primary. There's 8 hopefuls in the race. And so there's a lot of water to go over the dam between now and the primary in June. So who knows? But Salamone's video exposure of connections between Bobby Charles's LLC, which he created in 1997, I believe, and the deep state, the deepest, darkest, most toxic elements of the American empire's deep state are beyond concerning to me. Probably a deal breaker for him as being qualified to be the chief executive of Maine going forward. But as I say, it's early, and it's in politics. It's never about one issue. I mean, it is about prioritizing issues, uh, understanding, making up your own mind about what those priorities should be, and then speaking honestly to everyone about what your priorities are when it comes to statesmanship, when it comes to politics and law. I think that's an important part of the process. Um, but when you get right down to it and there's a vote, it looks like in this primary, we're going to have eight potential people we can vote for in the primary, which I think is very good. So pick your poison, right? Pick your poison. Pick the one who checks the most boxes for you based upon your thinking, your experiences, your prayer, your meditation, your own realities around you, economically, politically, familially, religiously. Pick your poison and then go vote. So between now and then, it's a free-for-all, because this is politics in the American constitutional republic, where we sort out our differences by voting. We sort out our differences by debating before we vote. We hope and pray that that politics can be civil. Of course, right now that isn't possible because the forces that define civility are just heading way off into la la land, left of center, off into progressive communism land here in Maine. It's becoming so, during my lifetime, it's become so one-sided. All the political control always leans to the left in Maine. Just saw a map this morning that kind of explained a possible future for New England, which is based on the blue-red categories that became active way back when we're thinking about politics. Maine is solidly in a blue region of the United States of America, so meaning left wing, leaning left, headed left, running left, rushing left. So what does that mean for us in Maine, for those of us who don't want to live under socialism or communism, who would prefer that the principles of the Constitution, of the constitutional republic, would remain intact and be there for us as individual Maine citizens? What does it mean for us? I'm not sure. I have no idea, really. But pretty clear that the Maine Constitution, if it's going to remain the highest law in the land, is going to have to be radically rewritten in order to fit with reality. We've ignored it. We're not going to be able to keep ignoring it. We're going to have to do something about those principles. And if it's the socialist communist left that continues to dominate Maine's politics, culture, and religion, then everything that we think is true about our daily lives is going to change, and it's going to be forced on us. Actually, it's going to be forced. It feels like it's going to be forced on us, whether we shift rightward or leftward in a political sense, because everything is so divided now. The chasms are just opening wider and wider on everything. We're dividing over our skin color now. We're dividing over our sexual orientation. We've forgotten what marriage means. We want to forget about it. We're allowing our government to force us to stop living like married, multi-generational human beings. We've already, that ship has sailed, right? That's no longer a thing. Divorce is super easy. Just go get it. If you get into, try getting people. Why would people even get married anymore, right? I mean, we are living into hell on earth, hell on earth. And it's because of our neglect. We've neglected the things that matter. And we are, it appears we're dedicated to continuing to ignore those things, we here in Maine. We're dedicated to it. We're just going to keep believing Jezebel Janet kills, or Bobby Charles, or whoever captures the flag for one side or the other. And then we're going to become loyal, I guess, to one team or the other, just like a football game. And I guess that if we keep doing what we're doing, then that's how it's going to play out. We're going to have to pick between the communist side. Well, it's not even really communism, right? We're going to have to pick. I prefer to think of it. We're going to have to pick between the side that hates God and the idea of God and the idea of any kind of transcendent reality beyond what we can see, feel, hear, and touch. We're going to have to pick the side that that is more dedicated. One side is very dedicated to that idea that there's nothing beyond what we can see, feel, hear, and touch, and that would be the Democrats here in Maine. And then the other side is just kind of a weaker version of that, right? A more sciencey, secular version of that same Democrat idea that there's no transcendent values or morality to which we can appeal. There's no God out there who is real, who exists, who has a moral law called the Ten Commandments or any kind of commandments. There's no God. It's just whatever floats your boat. That's sort of the right wingish version, and then the left wingish version is to worship gays and transgenders and victim status and oh poor me, and this perverted version of the feminine. We've turned that into an object of worship on the Democrat side, on the left wing side. So how does this get resolved? I don't know, but I know that this is really funny. This is a continuation of the song I played yesterday. This is Harrison. I think his last name might be Smith. Anyway, he's on the Alex Jones team that just ejected Owen Schroyer because Owen was thinking out loud similarly to this young man, Harrison. I guess he's still on the Alex Jones team. I don't know. But anyway, he recorded this in his car, it looks like yesterday, and he stuck it up on X. So let's give it a listen and get a chuckle.
What have the Jewish people ever done that's bad? What have they ever done to anybody? Nothing, okay? I mean, except communism, but, sure, that rose out of Judaism and killed 100 million Christians. But, other than that, what's the big deal? Fractional reserve banking, okay, sure. Yeah, the Fed and all that is not great. But other than communism and fractional reserve banking, what? The Middle East wars? Okay, fine. Yes, the Middle East wars and the fractional reserve banking and pornography and normalizing homosexuality and hijacking the civil rights movement. But other than that, what have they done to anybody ever? And if you're going to say they've killed hundreds of thousands of children and innocent people in their brutal wars of domination in the Middle East, then all I have to say to you is shut up, okay? It's who cares? It's well, other than those things, what's the big deal? What's the big issue other than the pedophile blackmail rings and the controlling the U.S. Congress and the imposing censorship on everybody because their bad deeds are being exposed? What have they ever done to anybody? The outrage is so unwarranted and overblown. I mean, people are acting like they killed Christ or something. Oh, shit.
People are acting like they killed Christ or something. Touche, Harrison. Awesome. I just love these young men like John Salamone and this young man Harrison and Owen Schroyer and all these guys who continue to think out loud in the moment, because that's what the internet makes possible. You can reach so many people instantly now, more people than ever in human history. And since the last 5, 6, 7 years, the whole dynamic, the whole culture, the whole aesthetic of the internet has been slowly shifting to live streaming and away from the massaged and edited and high quality and cultivated. This whole this forceful push of artificial intelligence is only helping, because everybody's rejecting AI slop, and everybody is being forced, because it's being pushed so hard by the by gay, literally gay people, like the head of OpenAI, whatever his name is, Sam Altman. He literally is bragging about how he has like he prefers his well, what shall we say, right? So, and everybody is looking at videos now, and if it's as good as Fox News or CNN or the legacy media perfectness, right, then they're immediately thinking this is slop. This isn't real. This is manufactured by artificial intelligence. And so, live streaming, which started taking off about maybe it's closing in on almost a decade, because I remember when it first started to become affordable and spread like wildfire on the internet. And I went to my friend Coach Dave Daubenmire, and I said, because he'd been thrown off the big Christian evangelifish Christian radio stations in the Columbus, Ohio area for speaking truth to power, basically. He reads his Bible. He talks, if you go watch his live stream, he talks more about the Bible than about anything else. And he honestly tries to apply the Bible, his reading of the Bible, to what's happening around him, to things political, things religious, things related to his family. He's a football coach. He's got kind of that coach approach. It's personal, it's forceful, it's masculine, and it's very Christian. And he wasn't afraid when he was doing talk radio. He was successful generating audiences 10 years ago in the Columbus market, and getting in trouble because he was calling out the pastors and saying, look, if we're going to fix America, we got to start challenging the politicians with the Bible, with Christian principles. We got to go public with this thing, being a Christian. That was his narrative. That's still his narrative. And so he got thrown off. And as I saw live streaming spinning up, I said, look, you should create a live stream. So he said, great, let's do it. So I ended up becoming his techie, but then I took it as far as I could take it. And then my son showed up out of the Marine Corps. He spent 8 years in the Marine Corps, and he was honorably discharged and had a much younger and more supple brain than mine. And he didn't know the first thing about live streaming, but I offered it to him. He wanted to get a business started, which is still going today, by the way. Althatech.com if you want to check him out. And he concentrates on, look, I'm on a rant, okay? I'm down a rabbit hole. I'm sorry. I'll just have to, hopefully I can get myself back to where I need to be. But althatech.com, check him out. And so he took Coach. He took Coach, and he made it work. And Coach is live streaming today. He's been live streaming for 7 or 8 years at 7 a.m. in the morning. You can go and watch him this morning if you want. CoachDaveLive.com, CoachDaveLive.com, and his whole archive is there. So I just remembered my original point. What am I going to do live streaming in the future as I get older and my short-term memory continues to weaken? I don't know. But anyway, back to my my point, which was how the aesthetic of the internet is changing radically and very quickly to this live streaming format being saleable, being marketable, being powerful, being able even, I think, as time goes on, to overwhelm the control mechanisms that are built into Facebook and X and all of the big tech platforms for both political but mostly commercial reasons. I think that whole modality for media is going to be tested hard, especially when it comes to politics, because people want to think for themselves, right? They're human beings. They're made in God's image, which means that they're a sovereign individual. God made them unique. No two of us are the same, and we make up our own minds. God made us to do that, to make up our own minds, to expose ourselves to truth, and then make up our mind about what we're going to do and how we're going to act and what direction we're going to go in, based on the truth that we expose ourselves to, or that comes to us. And so live streaming kind of forces a guy like me, or anybody who does it, to speak in the moment, speak truth. It becomes a little bit harder to fake it, to lie. Now, a lot of people. So anyway, that's all important to realize about what I'm doing here and why I'm doing it, and why I think that it's going to work, not just for me, but for anybody who tries it. Shane's with us again. Good morning, Shane. Appreciate you saying good morning to me when you're able to join me, which is most of the time. So that's great. God be with you today, my friend. Woke up early this morning thinking about what I wanted to say to you. By the way, you can comment if you're watching me on X or on YouTube. You can comment, and I'll see the comments. Let's see. Change my. Put that up. Okay. So I woke up thinking about what I need to say. I always ask myself that when I'm going to live stream or when I'm going to write my email, which is another service I provide for free, which is a daily email called the Issue Summary. And you can, got a bug here in the garage, and you can sign up for that. You can subscribe for that at michaelheath.org. Put that out every day. I just hit 3 current events with a paragraph, and I usually link to something as supporting argument, supporting material, something that caught my eye during the previous day of thinking about creating this show and just staying in touch with the truth as it shows up in my life. So I fell in love with the truth. Do you fall in love with the truth? I don't know. I mean, I think the truth is the truth. It's a thing, outside of each of us. But the idea of and the importance of truth has developed in my thinking, in my practice, but it started early for me. God was gracious and brought a resolution to my sexual urges early in my life by bringing Pauline True into my true reality, into my world. And when I was 18 years old, and I fell in love and pursued. At that time, there weren't as many. Things weren't as insane as they are today. In my mind, I'd been raised in the Methodist Church by my parents, and in my mind, even though pornography had tempted me greatly as a post-pubescent boy, It didn't enter into my consciousness through the internet because it didn't exist at the time. And so it was not ubiquitous, but it was nevertheless around, and it could be found by determined, enterprising young boys. And so I found my ways to get near to it, and I felt guilty about it, very guilty, supremely guilty, overwhelmingly guilty. And it when I did fall in love, that sense of moral guilt that I felt because of Christianity pushed me even more so toward my the love of my life. I'm still married to her and love her with my whole heart over 43 years now. We've been married. We have 3 sons. But that's when I met her, and that's when my sexual urges were resolved in marriage. It helped to drive me toward marrying that young lady who I fell in love with at 18 years old. And so then, with that resolved and sort of not really behind me, you still have to fight the temptation of addictions if you do fall into addiction to pornography. But it was contained within marriage, and I remained faithful. I've been faithful to our marriage to this day. And so it threw cold water on the hot fire of the passions and the sacrament of marriage, entering into the sacrament of marriage, dedicating myself, meaning it when I made that covenant on my marriage day in front of all those witnesses, meaning it that I was giving myself to her for my entire lifetime. And we've always maintained a prohibition on using words like divorce whenever we get into fights, which happens to all of us. So I having sort of tamed that beast of sexual urges, I pursued a degree in. One of the things that happened, in addition to me falling in love with Polly, is she was very dedicated to Christianity, much deeper commitment to Christianity and Jesus Christ than I had at the time. And I followed her into a deepened commitment to Christianity, and then obtained a degree in philosophy, and came home and spent 4 years living with and helping mentally ill and recovering people in a residential Christian community in Winthrop, Maine. And became the leader in my mid-20s. For 3 of those 4 years, I was the executive director of that operation. And then I left there and went to the Christian Civic League of Maine as the associate director. And within, in 3 or 4, I think I was there for 4 years under Jack Wyman, who was the executive director. And then I was elevated to executive director in my early 30s. And so I was leading a 100-year-old organization at 30-ish years old, while creating a family with my wife, and more passionate about pursuing the truth than ever before in my life, with the added pressure to pursue truth as the spokesman for the historic institution, which still exists and in many ways, I'm sure, is providing some good services to the people of Maine. The Christian Civic League of Maine, I became its spokesman. Formed in 1897, March 29th, by the president of Bowdoin College and the president of the Farmington State Normal School at the time, Maine's Teachers College. Even to this day, we now call it the University of Maine at Farmington. But the leaders of those two institutions were at that first conference or convention of the Christian Civic League of Maine, and they dedicated the institution to the following propositions. To number one, elect honest and competent public officials, which over the century of its existence became over the century of the Christian Civic League's existence, what came into existence, what changed about America is the connection between donors or money and politics. And so in order to pursue this goal honorably, you have to create a political action committee. And a political action committee is governed legally by the flow of money to the performance of this principle that was created March 29th, 1897 here in Maine by the Christian Civic League of Maine, by a religious body. But the founders were both leaders of educational institutions, two of our most respected educational institutions at the time, Bowdoin College and the Farmington State Normal School. So the second principle to which they committed themselves, or the second goal perhaps, is to enact good laws and provide for their impartial enforcement. So the enactment of good laws and their impartial enforcement can be carried on by what's called a 501c4 organization. And so when I became the leader of the Christian Civic League, and I am going somewhere with this related to Laurel Libby and her decision yesterday to pivot out of elected office. So when I arrived, the Christian Civic League of Maine was organizationally, corporately, a 501c4. And so it could enact good laws and provide for their impartial enforcement, meaning that we could lobby, we could receive donations, and we could use those donations to lobby politicians. And then the third principle or goal to which the president of Bowdoin College and the president of the Farmington State Normal School and Protestant Christian churches, because at that time evangelicalism didn't exist, it was just Protestantism, to which the Protestant churches of Maine dedicated themselves, was to educate all the people of Maine in good citizenship, which today can only be done in an institutional sense, in a corporate sense, in a legal sense, by a 501c3 organization. So 501c3 and 501c4 are IRS designations. And the reason they are IRS designations is because the donor class of America wanted to and wants to receive the opportunity to list the donations they make on their tax forms so that they can delete the donation from their income and therefore and thereby pay less in taxes. So that's how the IRS was drawn into this. And then the C3 and C4 designation came about because of the nonprofit world. Because in my case, because I was leader of the Christian Civic League of Maine, because the Christian world, the religious world of America, was drawn into this nonprofit sort of legal reality. So religious organizations were recognized by the national government and state governments as nonprofits. And that's contentious. That legally, that's contentious. Religious institutions have a very layered and complex relationship to these rules, to these laws, to these practices that only lawyers and accountants can argue over. I worked hard my whole time, 20 years, to understand these distinctions and to appreciate them and to live by them. But determined, I should have known it from the beginning, because in the end, it was impossible to live by them unless you had enough money to hire the most powerful accounting firm and the most powerful legal firm. There was no way to operate based on Christian, just not just Christian, but common sense principles. You had to have that kind of connection to big money lawyer, big money accounting firm, or else you were in trouble. And I got in all kinds of trouble because the Christian Civic League of Maine decided during my entire tenure to take on the most controversial social issue at the time, which wasn't abortion, believe it or not. It was the whole idea of gayness, what it means to be sexual and unmarried, and to create legal fictions to protect that right to fornicate and to live in adultery, to distance ourselves from those older categories, from those that's truth. Those are true categories. Adultery is a truth. It's not a fiction. It's not a category of the mind. Adultery is a good English word that means something. And fornication is a good English word that means something. In reality, in truth, it means something. But of course, we've destroyed all of that. With this sexual orientation fiction, we've destroyed all of that. And it was destroyed on my watch. And why was it destroyed? Was it my fault? Is it my responsibility that it was destroyed? In other words, Michael Heath, as executive director of the Christian Civic League of Maine? No, it wasn't. I never stopped going to the board of directors and saying, this is a critical matter for any Christian institution or entity to tackle publicly in politics with respect to law, culture, the future of our the possibility of creating multi-generational families with children and moms and dads who stay together for a lifetime for the sake of the family and for the sake of these truths that are forever, that go all the way back in human history and will go all the way forward in human history for as long as we're not robots, and for as long as we're not, as long as we choose not to merge with the machine or to stop being humans, then these truths will remain. They are true today. They're as true today as they were when God created Adam and Eve. And so so those were the three founding principles of the Civic League, and I've just gone over what happened over the century, and how when I became the administrator, the executive director, as well as the spokesman for the institution, things had already broken badly with respect to the Christian Civic League of Maine's opportunity to speak truth to power. And what broke and continues to break the Christian Civic League of Maine, and I was under enormous pressure from two directions, and it turned out to be the donor vector, donors and their passions and desires and needs with respect to the priorities and governance of the Christian Civic League of Maine. That it ended up to be the donor class that broke. Well, that's not true. It was a combination of the corporate legal structures that had been forced upon the league. This 501c3, 501c4, 501c5 actually was the PAC. We created a PAC under my leadership, but that went away. I don't think they've maintained that, but they still have the 501c3 and the 501c4. And so the way it works is you try to get as many small donations, like the $50 and $100 donations, into the C4, as well as the church donations. So the donations where a church puts the Christian Civic League of Maine into its budget, you get that into the C4. This was being done when I was there, and then you get the large donors into the C3, because the C3 used to, but I don't think it does anymore, provide a shield so that the donors' names don't have to become public. And then what I had to do legally was keep the educating all the people of Maine in good citizenship separated from the enacting good laws and provide their partial enforcement. I had to work to keep the accounting totally separate. And the reason was to shield it seemed like the only reason was to shield these large donors from disclosure. And the 501c4 didn't have to disclose donors either under nonprofit rules, but I think I haven't followed it closely since I left in 2009, but I think the pressure from the left to disclose even religious organization donors like the Christian Civic League of Maine, which were founded with a political end in mind. I think that that whole thing has changed. It's been pierced, and all the donations to anything that touches on politics, even if it has to do, even if it's of an educational nature related to civics, but maybe that doesn't have to be disclosed. I don't know. I'm telling you how things worked for the very low budget Christian Civic League of Maine that was tackling the behemoth called adding sexual orientation to the Maine Human Rights Act. So, I guess if we'd had millions of dollars, maybe we could have done a better accounting job and stayed out of the middle of all of this, debate. But we didn't, and we stayed faithful, and the pressure was put upon us through these rules, and we it is what it is. We won up until 2005 when we lost gay rights, and then in 2009 we won marriage. We stopped marriage again in a statewide vote, and then after that, I resigned just before that successful vote for our side in 2009, and then after that there was a big lawsuit that went after disclosing all the donors, which I think the folks who wanted disclosure, they won that. battle. So I don't know how that whole issue of being able to remain anonymous with respect to your contributions has, I think where it's probably been resolved is small donations can remain undisclosed. But I don't know what the limit is. Maybe it's $100 or less. And then anything over that in Maine anyway is probably disclosed. But don't quote me again. I haven't done a deep dive on any of that. But I share all of that with you to give you my background, my experiences with what I call the donor industrial complex of America, the donor industrial complex. You've heard of the military industrial complex. Well, there's a donor industrial complex in the United States of America and in Maine, and it's the donor industrial complex that runs everything, that controls our laws, that decides which laws get enforced and which laws don't get enforced. It's the donor industrial complex that is the real issue. And it's becoming obvious to everybody that this is the case as the dollar continues to experience its extreme debasement, because all fiat currencies go to zero and the dollar is no exception. And whenever it gets close to its final to its final collapse, its final descent, everything begins to accelerate. And that's what we're living into right now, is the acceleration of the collapse of the dollar. And at the same time, we're seeing our politics become absolutely controlled by the donor industrial complex. Look at Trump. Why can't he do the right thing? Maybe he doesn't want to do the right thing, but I mean, his DNA is in business. What's business? It's trade. It's selling stuff. So he doesn't come into the presidency as a high-minded, morally conscious man. He comes in as the deal maker, and now he's pretending that he can make deals to bring world peace and earn the Nobel Prize, when actually what he's doing is the bidding of the donor industrial complex. That's what he's doing. He can't do anything but that. That's what I came to realize at the Christian Civic League of Maine. You can't not go with the donor industrial complex. What they want, they get. And that's the voice that spoke the loudest to me, and what led to my resignation. I only ever had two reliable major donors, and they were not donors who gave millions. They were donors, which is what you have now in politics on both sides. You have donors. You don't have donors who give thousands to important, controversial, provocative proposals in politics. You have donors who give millions, and these people, the people who are that millions and billions, the people who amass that kind of wealth are one thing. If they're greedy, they are going to protect their wealth. They're going to protect their dollars no matter what it costs. And so what I learned the hard way is that the donor industrial complex decides, and it decided in 2000, beginning in 2006, it started to, the donor industrial complex of America decided that I'd worn out a space on the rug or something, and they started to cool off. Not that, see, Maine's nothing when it comes to the real power, the powers that really fuel that really fuel the empire. Maine's just an afterthought. So that's why they never dumped millions into our side up here of the homosexual rights debate. It's because Maine didn't, I don't think it matters that much, politically speaking. It doesn't bring that much power to Washington, that much of a threat. It's not that much of a threat. So I never was plugged in even though I was plugged in to the national movement through our nonprofit status, I never, and maybe it was my fault, I was never able to break through into the donor industrial complex. Not that I tried all that hard, but I knew that if I sensed early in my life, having come from philosophy, Bachelor of Arts degree in philosophy, I sensed that the kind of compromise that would be required for me to fit into the donor industrial complex, I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to make those compromises and sleep at night and hold on to my conscience. Which is not to say that if you've done that you're evil or something. That's between you and God. I'm just saying, for me, I realized early that I was going to have to stick to what I knew to be true when it came to setting priorities for the Christian Civic League of Maine. And what I knew to be true was that if we got this whole sexual, cultural, moral question wrong, we were going to do more than almost anything else to obliterate our families and obliterate our culture and disintegrate what makes us human. And so I kept our focus. I advised the board to stay focused on that. And over the years, the power in the Christian Civic League shifted away from the board to me. And one of the big reasons for that is because I was the one who signed the letters that went out to all the donors. And I was the one that was staying courageous, right? And then I became, at the end, radioactive and whatever. My tone and style was mean and angry and shrill, even though it wasn't. But that's the sense that was created about me. So the Civic League, so anyway, after we lost, right, in politics, it's all about winning and losing. So in 2005, I had fought this battle for 10 or 15 years and we lost. And there was, in retrospect, I realized I should have resigned in 2006, probably after losing the gay rights battle, because I was a loser then. I mean, I had been riding high for close to a decade, winning in statewide votes. And then all of a sudden I lost in this, front page issue. So politically, I was not just vulnerable, but probably I had lost my political career at that point. And I chose not to think about it, chose not to realize. So I stayed another 4 or 5 years, and then the donor industrial complex finally realized that this guy was just an impediment. And so through one of the two donors that I had always been able to rely on, I received basically a polite notice that if I didn't resign, we wouldn't be able to meet payroll. So I resigned, and then I became a driver, a member of the professional working class, which I'll be forever grateful for those years. Pulling weeds for a landscaper, serving as a park ranger, driving for FedEx during COVID, driving for the KV CAP, one of these government agencies that takes welfare people to appointments. So that's what I did afterwards. And wow, that hour has gone. But all of this to get to my cautionary advice, my caution to Laurel Libby, that lovely young legislator who it has followed her conscience to the point of being hated on in a big way by the left. Probably the most recognized hater, name attached with hatred in Maine, has announced that she's not going to serve her community anymore as an elected official. She's apparently stepping away from electoral politics, and she's taking up the leadership role for what I describe as the donor industrial complex. And so I believe, I don't know Laurel, I've never met her, never talked to her, but she's, like all of us, made some political mistakes. This latest thing with question 1 being filled with so many bad ideas and becoming overly complicated. She did that. She and Alex Titcomb, apparently, at the dinner table group, are the ones who spun that up and helped to give the right a black eye, give the good guys a black eye, the ones who want voting to have integrity. That whole idea took a black eye with question 1. All the blame can't be given to Laurel and Alex, because the left swept everything nationally and here in Maine, except for here in Chelsea, Maine. In my little village of 2,700 and something people, there was a proposal to go into more debt so that we could build a brand new town office that we don't need. And the voters turned out and overwhelmingly said, nope, not doing that. We're not going to go into debt for that. I hope that's what it meant, is that no more debt for our little municipality. We got to get this whole thing under control. Expenses have got to be put under control. So it wasn't a total flop for failure for little old me, but I thought we had lost that, but I just learned yesterday that the good guys won that one. But at the state level, it was a sweep for the left, for the socialists, and so Laurel and Alex can't be totally blamed, but they get most of the blame for question 1, and what happened with it. So she's moving away from being an elected official, and I can't say if she's following the money or going for the money. I don't know, but in my experience, what happens with a personality like Laurel Libby is, if you jump at the right time into the donor industrial complex and you do their bidding, which in Maine includes never thinking a negative thought about Jews. It means never taking on the sexual orientation issue, for sure. You're allowed by the donor industrial complex in Maine to be pro-life and to fight for that, but you're not allowed to fight against sexual orientation. You're allowed to fight over trannyism. Girls in the bathroom, right? We all want to talk about that until the cows come home, about girls and boys going to the bathroom together. Have you noticed how the political debate in our lifetime has just descended into the toilet, literally into the toilet? Have you noticed that? That's because of the donor industrial complex. It's this whole thing that we're dealing with, this whole reality, which is not reality at all. It's not truth at all. It's a category of the mind. We've talked a little bit about that in previous shows, and we'll be talking a lot more about it in future shows. But this category of the mind is fully funded by and created by, out of whole cloth, the donor industrial complex. And I can say this with such lack of fear, because I don't have any of these organizations, and I had one with my wife, and we used it to do some mission work, but we've closed that. I don't have one. It's just me. I'm doing this in my own name. I'm not trying to raise money to give to politicians or to create some kind of big change the world sort of operation. It's just me speaking. If you want to help me, I do ask people to help me with pay some of the expenses to do these live streams and things. But I don't have any kind of corporation or any kind of entity or any kind of C3 or C4 or C5 or any of that kind of nonsense. It's just me speaking. This is Michael Heath speaking. And so I'm free. And I've been free since I left the Christian Civic League of Maine. And I've consciously decided not to create any of those kind of entities when it comes to my political speech. And so that's limited me. But how real has it limited me? I mean, the FBI's been to my house. That's an honor. And I didn't, that's just because of my blog. I was just writing a daily blog article and sending it around. And I was doing some live streaming and not trying to gain clicks and likes and not trying to hire staff and not trying to any of that, just doing it all myself, which is what I do today. And right, turned enough heads to get myself fired forever at FedEx. You know, I'm in a file in Atlanta at the FedEx headquarters as a Christian. There's a whole big thick file on me. I've seen it. Sitting on the investigator's desk at the FedEx terminal during 2020, when they decided to, FedEx, the corporation, not the contractor. The contractor didn't want to fire me, but the FedEx, the corporation, forced them to fire me. And that's not because of the donor industrial complex being in my corner and me having all kinds of money to get clicks and likes and raise audience and everything, just because of my speech, just because of my little old blog that I never tried to monetize or tried to spin up into some immense audience and make myself into an influencer. I've never done that. But I still got the FBI to come visit me. And one of the greatest honors of my life, sort of, I mean, it's really spun my wife up a lot, and me too. It was scary, you know, because I thought the FBI was on our side, but they aren't. I can assure you. FBI, CIA, the national government, your state government, your local government ain't on your side. It's on the side of the donor industrial complex, which is why we need to close our morning talk here with prayer to God. Sorry to be so dark today, but hopefully some of what I shared with you you'll find helpful. And if you do, I hope you'll share the link at michaelheath.tv with a friend or with someone you care about, because I think gaining a deeper and broader understanding of what I've talked about today is going to help people like Laurel Libby, people like Charles, Bobby Charles. I really don't wish harm on any of these souls, these people. But this political war is more real today than it's ever been. And it is a political war. And everything I say and do is designed to avoid this becoming anything more than a political war. I don't want war in Maine. I don't want my sons, my grandsons and daughters to be drawn into some kind of bloody conflict based on ideology. It's not worth it. I don't think we need to go there. And so I'll keep saying the things that Bobby Charles and Laurel Libby may find uncomfortable, or Jezebel Janet Kills hates me for, or whatever. That's always been my goal, is to live in reality, to pursue the truth, and to love God. So join with me as we close this morning and begin our workday on this Tuesday by praying that most famous of prayers to our God, the Our Father, In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver